Welcome back to another episode of the King's Post podcast presented by the King's Herald. My name is Brendan Nunez. Got Chris Watkins joining us today of Sacktown Sports 1140, Kings Weekly. Apparently doing a bunch of stuff during the game, pre-game, post-game. This man does everything. What's up, Chris?
Yeah.
How you doing, man?
Good, man. I'm just trying to keep the lights on. Yeah, as you can see, it's Christmas time, so that PG&E bill goes up, and I got to work all these jobs to keep these damn lights on, bro. Like it's tough out here these days. So, I'm just trying to keep busy. I definitely am. So, definitely not getting tired talking about the Kings for like the past 2-3 years. How long have you been doing this podcast for?
Let's see. It's been about 3 years, I guess.
And like all we've talked about is shit basketball for 3 years.
Dude, the other day I typed Tankathon into my browser and I had to type the whole word. It didn't autofill. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, this is, I don't know anybody in the draft outside of Wemby and Scoot. And like, I know names, like I know Thompson twins. There's like, I was going to say Nick Miller. It's not Nick Miller. That's a New Girl character.
That is a New Girl character.
It's whatever dude from not Alabama. Where did Moody go? Arkansas. Yeah, I don't know. I know vague names, but by now I would typically already be like, okay, I need some sense of optimism. So like, let's see who's going to save the franchise through the draft. And that's not where we're at, man. They're playing well. The Kings just finished their 6-game road trip. I will say, by the way, at the beginning, I'm always horrible about saying this. We are on YouTube as always, and today we're live streaming. So we'll be interacting with the chat throughout here, and it's just Kings_Pulse on every platform there is. So check that out. What's up to the chat? I see Sean in here. Appreciate you hopping in. First one that we see in here. But the Kings are just getting off a 6-game road trip where they came away 3-3. And I think that is like possibly the best outcome that you could have reasonably expected for this team. And maybe it wasn't the games that I expected them to win and lose, but they came away 3-3 with a loss against Milwaukee, a win against Cleveland, back-to-back losses against New York and Philadelphia, not back-to-back nights, but 2 games in a row with New York and Philadelphia. After that Philadelphia game, they fly to Toronto on the second night of a back-to-back and win that game. And then most recently, earlier tonight, beat the Detroit Pistons. And there's a lot of fun connections to that team, whether it be Marvin Bagley, Corey Joseph, Rex Kalamian, even on that bench. And you got the Jaden Ivey, Keegan Murray storyline as well. Trey Lyles, that's right. So yeah, a lot of fun connections there. But what were your general, is there anything that happened during this road trip that you feel like changed your perspective, or you felt like you had a new discovery or anything like that about this Kings team?
Yeah, that's interesting. A new discovery, I'm not sure, but there was a lot. Well, actually, I should take that back. One is that, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it at length, but Domantas Sabonis it doesn't matter who's on the other side. That fool is going to get his numbers, and he's going to like make himself known. Like, he doesn't have bad days. Like, his bad days, I would argue, the only game where he didn't finish above like 20 points in this road trip was sorry, as I pull up his game logs here, was the Philadelphia, or was the Chicago game, which wasn't even on this road trip, where he didn't have 20 points. He had 11 points, 17 rebounds, 10 assists. Like, he's going against Vucevic, he's going against Lopez, Antetokounmpo, the Mobley Allen combination. It doesn't matter. He's putting up 20 plus points, 10 plus rebounds, and 5 plus assists every single night, it seems, regardless of playing the toughest competition. The fool is just undeniable. Like, he's Thanos.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got a couple people in the chat. We'll get through this. Somebody says HB isn't watched. We're guaranteed to talk about HB throughout the course of this. But Domas in these 6 games, man, averaging 21.2 points, 14.2 rebounds, and 6 assists, along with 1.2 steals, 0.7 blocks. But those 21 points are on 71% from the field. Like, he's going stupid. Like, Domas is doing this on a nightly basis, and it looks casual. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't even realize it's like quite happening. Like, I don't feel that much of a difference between the night where he drops 11, 13, and 7 compared to his 20, 21, and like 10 night. You know, like, he just and even those nights, he had that ridiculous stat line. I forget what team it was against. It might have been that last game that he had against Toronto.
Oh, the 2020 game?
Yes. And it somehow doesn't even feel like it says the full extent of his impact. 21 points, 20 rebounds, 7 assists, like
I mean, that's
10
insane.
of 13 from the field, ridiculously efficient. And it doesn't even feel like it feels like that's almost understating the impact that he had, which is somehow ridiculous. Like he is so freaking good. At some point soon here, you had this idea, I think it was, but at some point soon here, we'll actually go through the different players that should be considered for all-star candidacy. But at this point, do you feel like Domas is probably in there? There's still more games
absolutely.
to be played,
in terms of candidacy, absolutely. I mean, especially if he's classified as a center, that kind of knocks the competition down a bit. It could be, Jokic is probably going to be the starting center, but you have DeAndre Ayton, who he might be going against. I don't know if he's necessarily all-star caliber, but there's somebody else who I'm definitely missing at. Anthony Davis will more than likely be considered at center as well. So he's going to have competition, but
they might have changed it to guards and forwards. No.
Well, that would be even worse for him. I think starters also, you have to be voted in. So it'll probably have to be, do they decide coaches is the right? Who even knows how All-Star is picked anymore? Like, I know that there's a coach, like, I think it's only one of the players are selected by coaches. Who knows? But
I honestly couldn't tell you. Before we do that episode, we will know an answer for sure.
But how many players in this league realistically can have a stat line like he did the other night in Toronto, the 20, and 7? Like, there's Jokic, Embiid, I guess. Embiid doesn't really pass like that. We saw the other night they initiate everything through James Harden these days.
AD does belong there this year. Luka,
AD,
Giannis,
7 assists is quite a bit. Yeah, Giannis. I mean, in Sabonis, the point is, it's a bunch of guys that Sabonis is not typically grouped in with. So, I mean, that just speaks to it's not even that he's understated anymore, because I do feel like on a national perspective, like, people are picking onto it. Like it was, especially at the start of the season, a lot of talk about De'Aaron Fox, but I definitely feel the narrative definitely shifting to, oh no, like, everything these guys do offensively is, and even defensively, for those who are really watching, is because of Domantas Sabonis. So big ups to him, because I think he's playing better than every single person expected. And I also see him in the chat, but I'm told Halliburton is better. Like, that was a big so far, to start this season, was a lot of people seem to forget that, yes, Tyrese Halliburton. Everybody loves to talk about Tyrese Halliburton, the 20 points, leading the NBA in assists. Like, we got nothing for him. And, this is the guy that we got for him. You had to give up something special to get something special back. And, like, Domas has proven Monty McNair's decision completely correct.
Yeah. I mean, still TBD to an extent, but, like, obviously.
For sure. I definitely want to have that conversation at some point too. I think, we still could be proven a big time fool for that one as well.
Yeah, but vibes are immaculate, as chat says here, which, by the way, I don't know where that stems from. Like, I know that you said it the other day, and, like, whenever somebody talks about vibes, I always go to the word immaculate as well, and that's definitely some sort of meme, but I don't know the origins of that. So if somebody in the chat happens to know, I would very much appreciate some sort of education here.
Did AD really get hurt tonight?
That is what somebody in chat is saying here, so I am not sure.
I got the Laker game on, and I'll have to turn around and check it.
I will say some of the takeaways on my end is that it's hard to tell if it's an outlier or not, but it feels weird to use the word outlier on back-to-back nights. But they had 2 games in a row where they just couldn't shoot the ball to save their life. Right. At least for their standard, right? The New York and the Philly game, they both hit 10 triples in that game. And they've only hit 10 triples or less 5 times all year, and that's including the 2 that we just saw take place. So, like, they feel like outliers, but I don't know. Like, I think Herter was unavailable for at least one of those games. Malik had been cold, but to me, when you still have HB, you still have Keegan, like, Terrence Davis is still sitting on your bench. Trey Lyles, maybe not have been available for all of those games, but at least some of them. Like, in my mind, I didn't think that this team would have back-to-back bad shooting nights, and it made me question that a little bit. But I think until proven otherwise, I'm still going to kind of view those as the outlier. And I will say, like, even earlier in this, earlier in the year, they did have a game where they still managed to pull out a win when they weren't able to shoot well. And I think that's important to be able to do that. And there were plenty of other aspects in those games that they were horrible at, specifically on the defensive end when it came to New York and Philadelphia. Like, I think my other big takeaway, aside from trying to maybe monitor the shooting a little bit more rather than just thinking like this team is elite at shooting and maybe they can just still have their off nights, even with everybody on this team seemingly being really good shooters, is that like they need to be better on the defensive end more consistently, because that New York and Philly game were honestly pretty disgusting. Like they were really bad. It was reminiscent of the beginning of the year where it was like, okay, obviously you're a good offensive team, but you're still a really bad defense. And then they started to pick it up. There was trending upwards, is the term that Mike Brown loves to use, right? And you felt like that was very much happening. And then those two games were really bad, man. Like the Philly one, I overreacted on socials. I think I said it was an embarrassing game, but like they got destroyed. Like, and it was in transition. Like, how is Joel Embiid the guy beating every single other player on the court down the floor? Like, I don't understand how that's possible. You're fouling the hell out of him, and then you start overplaying him because he's just destroying you in the first quarter, and then these other guys start picking you apart. But I think that overall, I don't mean to harp on those couple games, because overall this road trip was a massive success. Like coming out 3-3, I think this is everything that you could have wanted from this road trip in my mind. Fox is healthy again after his foot issue. Do you feel like we saw like the Fox that we saw at the beginning of the year in these last two games?
Yeah, it's starting to feel like he's getting that way. I think he's still trying to dial in his shot, but you saw, I believe it was against Toronto, it looked like his shot was completely locked in, but it seems, that mid-range shot that he had was automatic. That fall away, drive into the paint and then fade out of the fade away is kind of, he's still trying to reel those things in, but it does feel like he has his burst back, and he's definitely looking a little bit more like that guy that we saw in the beginning of the season for sure.
Absolutely. I'm there. I feel like the burst is there, and that's kind of like the most important thing to me. He's had good defensive moments too. I think he drew a charge tonight on Ivy, I believe it was. It could have been somebody else that I thought was really impressive. And by the way, if he ever plays rookie guards, he always goes crazy. Like Morant's rookie year, I remember this. I think Garland's rookie year. Ivy tonight just didn't do anything because he was in foul trouble all night. I think he ended the game with more fouls than points. He ended up fouling out of this game. Right. Yeah. I think it was 5 points, 6 fouls. So tough night for him. And real quick because I think the meat and potatoes of this episode is going to be a trade season primer, and we're going to kind of categorize everybody on Sacramento's roster into the likelihood we think they will or will not be moved. But before we move on to that, just finished this road trip. Like I said, 3-3. The Kings are currently sitting at 16-12, and that is good for 5th in the Western Conference now, since the Portland Trailblazers must have lost earlier tonight. There were a lot of games tonight. They did lose by 20 to the Dallas Mavericks. Damn. But the Kings are sitting at 5th right now, and they have a lot of road games coming up because they've had 2 really tough East Coast road trips already. And we're only 28 games into the season at this point. The Kings are 8-4 at home, and 3 of those 4 losses were came in their first 4 games of the season. There was that Portland one that was the home opener, and then the Clippers that was game 2, and then they went on the road in Golden State and they did lose that game, but then they came back home and played Memphis and lost that. And their only other loss, so after losing those first 3 at home, they've been 8-1. Their only other loss was against the Phoenix Suns, who I know are struggling recently, but that was the best record in the Western Conference last year, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And they were rolling during the time that the Kings went up against them. So 8-4 at home, those 4 losses that I just walked through. And after today's game in Detroit, 11 of their next 13 games are going to be home games for the Kings. And 8 of those 13 games are against teams currently below 500. Like, this feels like a really big opportunity to kind of solidify themselves in this potentially 6 seed area and maybe flirting with home court advantage. And that could totally come back down as the schedule continues to get more difficult. But do you have confidence in the team at this point that they will like take care of business in the games that they're quote unquote supposed to win?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's kind of it's kind of one of those things that you believe them until they make you feel otherwise. And typically, I mean, this team has not been like that. They have not beaten teams that they should have beaten, even though they were bad in the past. Like, it just was never a requirement, or never something that always happened. And this season, it definitely has. Like, it definitely feels like tonight would have been a prime example of a game where it's just a natural letdown game. It's the last game of a road trip. You had just gotten a huge win in Toronto on the second night of a back-to-back. You weren't expecting to get this. This is a perfect trap game for you. You're already looking forward to going home. And tonight they had an opportunity to roll over. Detroit again gave them a good battle for whatever reason. Detroit seems to be a good matchup for the Kings, even without Cade Cunningham. Detroit played them well, I thought, today. They shot the lights out for the first half, and then Kings hit them in the mouth that third quarter. They kind of responded back a little bit in the fourth, and then the Kings put them down as the game wound down. But they've proven this year, and they have earned, I think, Kings fans respect in the sense that they play the Hornets, the Lakers, the Wizards at home this week. Those should be all wins. There's not really any reason for you to drop any of those games. The Lakers have started to play better as of late, but it hasn't shown in their overall record, as they're still 11-18. They are beating the Nuggets right now. So I'm sorry, 11-16. They're about to be 12-16. They're getting better, but they're still by no means a team to the level of the Kings. Like, they should take care of business. And I think this is a perfect week, like you said, to prove to everybody again, like, no, we are serious. We're legit. We're not going to, let these games slip. This is a real opportunity, not only for them to get some good wins, but also to kind of flex a little bit and showcase, like, no, we can really dominate and be that exciting team that we were at the start of the season.
I'm a believer for sure. I think the Charlotte game should absolutely be a win. I think the Washington game, I made a mistake on your pod, Return of the Roar, with yourself, Frankie, and Matt yesterday, and saying that Washington had been rolling a little bit. And I'll make a confession on that, by the way. I fell asleep listening to the low post, right? And I woke up, right? And then I just like pressed resume and kind of took a shower. I had it going in the background during my whole like morning routine. And they were talking about how Washington had really been rolling. Right.
Yes, they were.
Defensively, like they were really on point. Well, but then I realized that they were talking about a team from like last year, and I had accidentally gotten on a way earlier pod. So I had been listening to about like some hype about Washington from last year. It got totally thrown off. But Washington,
in your defense, they were playing well. They were really playing well. And then they have lost 8 straight and 9 of their last 10. I mean, at one point I think they were even above 500. So I didn't think it was too. That's why. I in your defense also, I completely agreed with you. I was like, yeah, Washington has been playing well, because last time I checked on them, they had.
And then you pulled it up mid pod and you were like, I think you and I are wrong on this. They've lost 8 in a row or whatever it is.
Hey, man, I like to keep it 100. I'm not gonna act like accurate.
Yeah, if we're wrong, we're going to say we're wrong,
Right.
Some people might not be that way, but that's what we're going to do here.
Right.
So I think this homestand is a really good opportunity for the Kings to continue to solidify themselves. Like we mentioned, Charlotte, LA, Washington. Then you do have a back-to-back against Denver. I will say probably the most impressed I was with Domas last year. And I think he only played about 15 games last year with Sacramento, so there wasn't that much opportunity to really get a feel for him. But I thought some of the most impressed I was with him last year was when he was against Jokic. And that was when I got like the first taste of like, oh, this guy's actually a solid defender. Yeah. So I think that it's reasonable to think that the Kings could split that. There's a Utah game in there. And they go on the road for 2 games, and then their next homestand is really favorable. Whereas at one point you're playing Orlando and then Houston twice, all home games, and then you go on the road and play San Antonio. Like,
I've been looking forward to that trip for a while. I've been looking forward to that mid-January stretch. If we can just get to mid-January with above 500 record, we have 7 straight very winnable games.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll see. And sometimes you're going to lose games that you should win. And then other days you're going to win games that you should lose. Right. Shout out Sean Cunningham for the word should. But yeah, I mean, like the Toronto game, I thought was the hardest game of the road trip. I thought the New York game was the easiest game, or well, aside from the Detroit game, but that's the last game of the trip too. Also could be a little bit of a tricky one. But like I thought they'd win the New York. I thought they'd lose the Toronto game, but you alternate those two and it's the same sort of outcome, you know? So exactly. I think that's
one of those where you got to take the wide view, you know, that's where you can't get lost in the day-to-day grind of it. Like you do have to take that step back. And like you said, like you finish the road trip 3-3. I do the Kings weekly show every week. We look ahead to the week that is. Like all you can really do is try and get that record. It really doesn't matter how you get it.
Yeah. Absolutely with you. Eric, I want to clarify real quick because I've been keeping up with your comments here. You say they turned off the beam already. I think Morgan said on the broadcast that she got told they were going to, or maybe not on the broadcast, but somebody said that Morgan was told and they at her that the beam would stay on until the team landed. And I see Eric said in the chat that the beam is already turned off, but then later I see here that he checks again and maybe he's wrong, but I don't know if he's still talking about that. So if we get an update of if the beam is still on,
beam watch, yeah,
please. We need a little bit of a beam watch here. But
we live.
I think we can move on to the next portion of the pod. Like I said, this is going to be the main segment here. Yes, I couldn't think of great names for these different categories, to be honest. But the idea here is trade season is approaching. And I don't know how true that is, to be honest, but everybody's talking about it all of a sudden.
Right.
So Eric says he's wrong. I appreciate you for admitting that, Eric, and it's good to know that it is still on. So we categorized every single member of the Kings. I did 15. I didn't do the two-way guys. Into 4 different categories. And you did do the two-way guys?
Yeah.
All right, I could do it on the fly. It will be easy. Yeah. There's a less than 1% chance of being traded. We can call this the Tyrese Halliburton category because because I wanted to say untouchable, but nobody is ever untouchable. I would have called Tyrese untouchable last deadline.
Right.
You know, I mean, there were whispers of like Ben Simmons, like I would have considered and blah, blah, blah. There's different guys I would have considered. But I never want to say untouchable. So I went with there's a category of less than 1% of being traded.
Should be traded.
Right. And then there's a small chance of being moved, which is pretty much like for an outlier package or the right sort of deal. And then there's, I have no clue if they'll be here or not, to be honest. Like it's just kind of a coin flip. They'll be here or gone. And then the final category is I would be surprised if they were not traded.
Right. I think the easiest way would be like, like you said, less than 1%, 25%, 50-50. And then I'd say about 75% chance, I think.
Yes. And I originally, maybe not originally, but at some point considered doing those exact percentages. But then I felt like it could get, I don't know, aggregated
I feel like this is more like a 62%.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm like, I don't know about 75 here. So I think the way to go about this, okay, so let me ask you, do you think that we go through everybody that we have in a category, or do you think like we name a player and then say what category they're in?
I think category is easiest.
Okay. So let's start with the less than 1% chance of being traded.
Okay.
Yeah.
You go ahead and go through your list and I'll just, I feel
let's alternate if you're down.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Obvious one. De'Aaron Fox.
Right.
And I wrote down the contracts that they have remaining. So I'll go through that as we talk to.
Please do.
De'Aaron Fox, remaining 4 years, $134.9 million. Is De'Aaron Fox in your less than 1% of being traded category? Okay.
Yes. Another
easy. You got next.
Domantas Sabonis.
Yes. He has 2 years, $37.9 million remaining. Easy one.
Easy.
I have another one in my less than 1% chance of being traded.
Yep.
Kevin Huerter.
Yes.
4 years, $65 million remaining.
Yes.
Do you have another?
Yes.
Okay. Who do you have?
Keegan Murray.
Oh, okay. I do not have Keegan Murray.
Interesting.
Keegan Murray is on his rookie scale deal, 4 years, $36.4 million remaining, but first year of his rookie scale deal. I think it's after year 3, he's eligible for an extension. Year 4, he'd go into restricted free agency. The last one that I have in my less than 1% chance of being trading, which again, I do not have Keegan Murray actually, is Malik Monk.
Yep.
I have 2 years, $19.4 million remaining on Malik Monk. So you have Malik as well. And the difference between us is that you have Keegan and I do not.
Yeah.
Okay. So Fox and Domas are obvious, right? But when it comes to Herter and Monk, like, do you think if there was some, what made you put them in this category compared to the next of like, if there was like the right deal, they would be included?
A, I don't think that deal is out there. And B, I think that those two players have proven to be too important to the Kings when they are rolling. When the Kings have been at their best, especially earlier in the season, Kevin Herter was shooting above 50% from 3. I think they saw the obvious value in that when he was rolling like that. I think they see the potential of the Domas Herter 2-man game. So I think, Kevin Herter, that speaks for Kevin Herter. Malik Monk is just too valuable. I mean, you look at his contract, he's on a mid-level exception. You're not going to get that level of production for that contract period for anything. So that's an incredibly valuable piece. And then you throw on the value that he has on the court as well, where, he's clearly on a night where somebody else might not have it. Malik Monk has had it every single night, which I've been surprised by because I thought he was going to be a lot more streaky than this, but he's been hyper consistent this season, putting up 15 plus, it seems, every single night. So I just think that those two guys are way too important to what the Kings are best at right now, or trying to be.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. I think like the most important thing for this team is guys that can shoot that are also super high IQ players. Right. And Malik Monk, I did not think that Malik Monk was a super high IQ player, admittedly, when he came into the Kings. I thought 100%. He had like a little Buddy Hield in him, to be honest. Yep. I thought that he would be frustrating sometimes.
A lot of Dante DiVincenzo.
Calm down, okay? Buddy Hield and Dante are not the same. For anybody unaware, I'm a Dante defender.
That wild sense of, I'm going to pull this.
Yes, it was easier to forgive Dante for me, but I know that that we are not the same there, and you are by far not the only person that was agitated by Dante on a nightly basis. He definitely has his moments for sure, but I think that also like they just acquired Herter. Herter is still young. He's got 4 years remaining on this deal. Right. I just don't see that him.
Also, it's a win. It's already a win for Monty McNair. Why would he risk that win that he got?
Right. And also the other aspect of Malik, to me, I do think he's a really important member of this. I think that there's an aspect of if you sign a guy and then trade him right away, and this is one of like the bigger signings in recent Sacramento history when it comes to value, like that's like you said, it's a really bad look. Like agencies could look at you differently and just start to second guess like I think when the Celtics traded away Isaiah Thomas, they were looked at differently, like that's a different thing specifically, but I think that there is an aspect of that, of like Malik Monk picked the Kings over other teams from the impression that I've gotten, and potentially more money elsewhere because he wanted to play with Fox and he just wanted to be on this team. And I think if you trade that guy, that's a bad look. So that's where I'm at with those guys.
As a transition here, can you talk to me why I assume you had Keegan in this next tier as opposed to the 1%?
I did.
As someone who lived through Thomas Robinson being traded at the deadline during his rookie year, I just feel like that treatment is for a special few types of rookies, like Buddy Hield, for example.
Rookies that are not
someone who was traded
living up to expectations.
Exactly.
Yes.
I don't think Keegan's quite there yet, but he's definitely proven enough so far this season, I think, to where the Kings would rather play out what they have. I have a different conversation for tomorrow's Kings Weekly, just as a nice little plug. I definitely have some questions about, the selection of Keegan Murray and if we can look back on that, but we can speak on that here as well. But I'm just curious why you think why you have him in that next tier of possibly being traded. I assume that would be if you're big game hunting, right? Like If you're
Yes,
if you're going to
that's
try and pull off
exactly
a
what
Kevin
it
Durant
is.
trade or something, right?
Yes, and not even necessarily KD, but
I mean, yes, that was way too.
guys that you think are a perfect third option. You know, like
Right.
I'm a very big OG Anunoby guy, and I think he's
Mhm.
a split decision. But like, does it not sound really reminiscent of trading Tyrese for Domas and not having to include any picks? Like if you were to go and swap
Right.
Keegan for like a guy that's
Right.
hypothetically your third guy for a guy that is your third guy already, you know, like I don't know about
Yeah.
OG specifically, but I think there's other guys around the league, and it admittedly, like I think throughout the course of this, I told you while we were prepping for this, like we weren't going to specifically talk about other names around the league, so I didn't put all too much thought into that. I will say, but like I'm trying to think of somebody on the spot, like if Zach LaVine became available. Like, I don't like Zach LaVine, but like a player of that caliber, you know what I mean, became available. Like, I think that Keegan Murray could be on the table. You know what I mean? I think there's a very small chance, a 10% chance sort of thing. And while we were doing this, I had to like try to rethink my categories and stuff. It was asking you questions, trying to figure this out. Like, I think it's a small percent chance that Keegan Murray is traded, but I don't think it's the same as these other guys. I think that if you could take a sure thing somewhere else, then he could be considered, you know?
Yeah,
And
right.
that's
I
all
think
it
I
is.
get you.
I'd be
Like,
shocked if he was moved,
if
but
we're
in the
talking
right
like
deal.
Jimmy Butler becomes available or something.
Right.
I don't know if that's even a good example, but
yeah, I'm
someone of that caliber where it's like you have to trade Harrison Barnes and
Pascal Siakam, right? Like
Pascal. There
I'm
you go.
putting
That
Keegan
works.
Murray on the table for Pascal Siakam, and that's
Right.
not me hating on Keegan Murray. Like when we
Again,
were
you could
in
argue it's a compliment.
right, actually. That's exactly yes. Keegan has been more impressive than I expected. At least in the flashes, you know, like I think I underestimated his ceiling. I did expect him to be better than he has been so far, but I'm not worried in the slightest. I think it's typical rookie stuff. He looked great tonight in Detroit, by the way.
Yes.
And he's had a lot of games where he looks really good. And I love the fact that he did it against Detroit, because I'm assuming that Detroit fans, media, and all that haven't got to see Keegan that much. And there was a conversation of Keegan versus Ivy. And I loved it in the game where those two go head to head. Ivy looked really tough, at least on the defensive end. He kind of just got abused. I think he had his moments on offense where it was like, whoa, this guy's going to be something in the future. But Keegan looked really good. So I love that. But all I'm saying is that, like, I could see a world where Keegan is moved if they were to take another big swing this deadline. And I don't think that's likely, but I think Siakam is a perfect example. Like if that sort of guy became available, then I think that Keegan Murray would be on the table.
I have a lot of Keegan Murray thoughts that I'm going to keep chambered until
there we go. We'll get to them in a later pod, you know? Do you have anybody else in this small chance of being moved category?
The small chance is yes, I do. I have that. That's my longest list is the small chance.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
My longest is the next one. This
really?
one is very short for me, actually.
So you have Keegan in this one.
Uh-huh. Who do you have next?
This is where I put a lot of the two-way guys. So I do have Chima, Keon, and Nimi all in this category.
Okay.
How many people are in this?
I actually only have one
you?
more, and then I have so many in my straight up I don't know, because I could see so many of them not being the centerpiece of a deal, but being like an additional piece that maybe swings the odds for the other team involved, you know?
Interesting. Okay. So I think that tells me that we just have two different views of how we think this trade deadline is going to go. I think that the Kings aren't going to move mountains in order to, I mean, there's not really much, they can't really get much better. You know, they can maybe improve a seed or two with moving Richaun or something, which I'm not trying to spoil the list later, but like, that just tells me that you think that a lot more people are up in the air to get traded than I do. I personally have like who go ahead and list the rest of your people in this tier.
Well, I might have you go through and then tell you when I have the same one, but I will say, I think the difference for me when I have all these guys in this like coin flip category is that, okay, obviously one of the would not be surprised if they're traded as Richaun Holmes. That's no secret. Everybody would have had that, right?
Right.
And then to me, when you're talking about a Richaun Holmes deal, there's a lot of guys that I could see being the other guy in that deal. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so anybody that wouldn't have surprised me to be the +1 in a Richaun deal, I put in the coin flip. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. Again, I just think that we might have different views of I shouldn't even say different views. I just personally don't think that many people have value. So I will do I'll do my small chance one. I have Chima, Keon, Nimi, as I said. I also have KZ in this category just because I don't think KZ again provides much value. He's just kind of he's going to be a throw-in if he is going to get traded, but even then I don't know why a team would this is going to sound mean, but I don't know why someone would pick KZ as their bonus piece on this roster of their pick of the litter.
I'll respond to that real quick because KZ was one of the borderline ones for me. And I definitely get what you're saying with Chima as well and the two ways. I didn't include the two ways, like I said, and it would make sense to put all these guys in here because to me, the Kings value those guys more than other teams, right?
Exactly.
Like the way that Mike talks about KZ is pretty fucking wild, bro. Yeah. He's sitting here talking about like defensive player of the year type potential. Yeah. And I see where he's talking about when you're talking like absolute peak outcome, best possible case scenario for KZ Okpala.
Right.
6'8", 7'2" wingspan. Like, I get it, right? But like, what other team in the league is being like, oh, this dude could be a defensive player of the year?
Right.
Like, so I definitely get where you're coming from.
Yeah. I also have Delhi in here, kind of for that same reason. There's just no reason why a team would specifically seek, if you're really looking for a third guard, you probably like Delhi was available. I assume that a team would much rather sign Quinn Cook, for example, than make a trade with the Kings for Dellavedova if they plan on using him. I also have Trey Lyles in this category. This one, probably because of his contract, he might be a little bit more in that 50-50 range than I initially thought. I did kind of do this off of initial thoughts and didn't really do too much deep diving into it, but it just doesn't feel like, again, like you said, it feels like Trey is probably at this point more valuable to the Kings than he would be to somebody else, but I could definitely be wrong about that. Like Trey, I think is pretty universally known as just a solid piece, but I don't know if he's really how much value he's necessarily adding on top of his money because he's not a minimum paid player, is he?
Trey Lyles is making he's an expiring $2.6 million deal. And I will say
so that's
the guys that you've gone through, he's probably the one I disagree with you on the most. Like I absolutely get your logic, and I think that we just viewed this differently with Dellavedova, with KZ, with Chima, with Neon, with Kimi, or with Neon. With Keon and Nimi. Neon Keon, that's a great fucking name.
Neon and Kimi.
I get your logic there where it's like I don't know what value they would have to other teams, and I'd be shocked if another team was interested in them. But I guess my logic there, which I think we're on the same page but just view this differently, would be like if a team was like the deal's not done unless KZ Okpala's in it, then the Kings would be like, sure, the deal is done. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that we're on the same page here. We just viewed those guys differently. Right. But I will say I think a little differently of Trey Lyles. I think that Trey has value as like a 9th, 10th guy on a roster. Like 8th, 9th,
but I think that value is more on this roster. I mean, again, like
is it? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, how are you going to replace him is more the thing. It's not that he's irreplaceable, but it does feel like he does slot in pretty nicely to that backup 4 role at the moment. Like he plays, he's kind of that ideal size, still keeps the mobility, still can shoot. And it's just solid. Like, I don't think they're really, I don't know. I mean, maybe they could look for more. You can always have more 3-and-D guys, but I don't know. I feel like Trey is just a good value piece to have. I do have somebody else in this who I definitely feel like you're going to disagree with. I have Davion in this. And I think it's a little bit of the same logic that I have with Keegan, where it's just like it feels like a little bit too early for them to give up. You and I both share the same feelings on Davion Mitchell, and I think we would both give up on this experiment. But I just don't know if you're going to trade Davion, what is your solution at backup point guard? And I think with the injuries that we've seen to Fox so far, and Just, the fact that you have to give Fox a rest at some point in the game. I do think that their backup point guard position is pretty valuable, and I don't know. I don't think that they would just throw that aside.
I had Davion as the one other guy in my small chance of being moved category, believe it or not.
Really?
Because I have been pretty critical of Davion too, but I don't even know exactly how to go about explaining this. He has 3 years, $16.3 million left, right? He has 2 years left until he's eligible to be extended for those full 3 years, which means this year and 2 more until he would potentially enter restricted free agency if there was no extension agreed upon. It was tough to me because I think there's a chance that there's still some teams around the league that value him really highly. And there's a chance that the Kings do too. Like, I don't really know, but they clearly do not feel like playing him alongside Fox is the most viable option. And maybe we've seen that a little bit more. There was that Phoenix game that I personally thought that Davion actually should have closed that game. I thought he was the best option on Devin Booker. But I think that it would take a team really having liked Davion at the time of the draft and having believed that what they've seen so far hasn't changed their mind at all, I guess. That they still think he can be a starting point guard in the league. And I kind of always, I don't want to say I always viewed him as a backup point guard. Like,
I did.
That was my realistic.
I always viewed him as backup point guard.
I guess I should say that.
Especially in the situation that he was drafted to, he was always going to be a backup point guard.
Right. And I will say that is what I expected, but I didn't think that was like the only possible thing for him. I thought it was possible he became a starter. You know what I mean? But he's just the guy that, to me, like, you have more time to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have team control with him. And unless there is a team that is clearly valuing him more than you are, then I just don't see it really happening.
Right, which is why I have him in that. I have that in the. That's why I have him below the 50-50. To me, the 50-50 is really like. I don't like. He's either going to be like. There's just as good chance of this as this, and I just don't think that there's that many guys on this roster.
Yeah,
I don't think that they're going to be super active either.
Do you have anybody else in your small chance of being?
No. So my small chance is Davion, Chima, Keon, Nemi, KZ, Deli, and Lyles.
Okay. And mine is just Keegan and Davion.
Okay.
And again, as I explained earlier, I think we just kind of viewed it a little bit differently. Like, To me, it was, I wouldn't be surprised if these guys were included in a deal. Like, I just didn't feel confident saying that, like, these guys will be around. Like, to me, if the Kings were trying to make a deal and it was like, it's not done unless X guy is included, then like, I felt like the Kings would be like, all right, let's just do that,
Right.
But obviously depends on the deal. And by the way, everybody in the chat, appreciate everybody in here. At some point, we will totally field your questions. That is the plan for the end of this segment. I'm not ignoring y'all, but if you have comments on the specifics of who and who should not be a part, I eventually got it out there, who and who should not be a part of these different tiers, we'll gladly talk about it, but I'm not ignoring the chat. I'm just trying to keep us on topic because I will very quickly get off topic if I start pulling up things in the chat here. But okay, so let's go to this coin flip category then. And my coin flip guys that you've already gone through, and I think that we're actually on the same page with, we just kind of viewed this exercise a little differently, are KZ Okpala, who has 2 years, $3.9 million remaining. Chima Moneki, who has 2 years, $2.7 million remaining. Matthew Dellavedova, that's an expiring $2.6 million deal. Trey Lyles, an expiring $2.6 million deal. And I don't have Keon or Nemi on my list. So I guess we're good there. So if we're starting with the coin flip here, where I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised either way if they were here or if they were gone. First one I'll shout out, Terrence Davis.
Yep.
Expiring $4 million deal. And I'll say my logic here is that I think TD might have some value. Like I think that he's more than just a throw-in. Like, I think he definitely adds to the value of whatever deal that the Kings are trying to get. Now, I don't think that he's somebody that the Kings are like going to look at and say, like, we want to move this guy and get something better. To me, he's a guy that's added on as an incentive to make a deal better for the other team. But is TD part of this group for you?
Absolutely. Yep. For all the reasons that you said, I think his contract is very movable. Like you said, under $5 million. That's nothing. And he's shown his level of production. I mean, we saw tonight or the other night filling in for Kevin Herter. Who was that against? Was that Toronto? Yes, it was Toronto because he was back in Toronto. Had a great night filling in, and he had the national TV game of having 30 plus. There was 35 in that game.
TNT TD.
Absolutely, that's that. If you don't think that plays a role in his value, you're absolutely wrong, because him having a big performance on national TV absolutely is something that if he were to get traded to a team, that's one of the first 3 videos that every fan is seeing is 35-point performance Terrence Davis on national television.
Kevin Durant on his podcast being like, Terrence Davis lit us up.
Right, absolutely. So
right.
I completely agree with you there.
Who you got next?
I have Chimezie Metu on this list.
Shocker.
A little bit for the same reason as TD, without the production. I'm joking. It's more just, he is a rotation player on an upstart team who has, if you watch his film, you can find a little bit of everything. You could convince yourself that, hey, we can hone in on this one part of Chimezie Metu's game and make him just do that. Whether it be, we've seen him attempt to stretch the floor. You can definitely talk yourself into that. Everything except for defensive rebounding. You can look at Mezzi and say, like, yeah, this guy will work on our team. So I just think he's a very movable piece. And I think, like you said about TD, he just adds a little bit of value. I think less than TD's value, but he's definitely not nothing. Maybe the equivalent of like a second round pick.
Yeah, he's an expiring $1.9 million deal. And personally, I'd be shocked if he was brought back. There's some of these other guys that, like, I could see it, but maybe I'm overreacting to just the times that we get Mezzi available to media, and he just never seems happy with his role. Like, he seems like he has settled into it and is willing to do it, but he does seem very much like he thinks that he could do more. Like, I think the wording is something along the lines of, and this is very much paraphrasing, like, I could do whatever they ask me to do, but this is what they have asked me, so that's what I'm doing. Which is very much like, I think I could do it all. And
I definitely think at the least Mezzi's role is dead at the end of the trade deadline. I think
they've been playing with Richaun literally these last 2 games. Like, and Richaun's been bad. Like, we'll get to Richaun for sure. Yeah. And he's been all right these last 2 games. Like, I like that they're bringing him back out. And part of me wonders if that has anything to do with the trade line approaching. I could absolutely see that being the case. Yeah. But I do think that, like, Mezzi makes sense on a team that thinks they could do more with him. And I absolutely see why somebody could believe that they could do more with Mezzi. Yep. He is really athletic. He is, especially for his size, he has some shooting potential. Like, his form isn't gross or anything. It doesn't go down at a good rate. But like, I see how his versatility could be very appealing. And I think specifically on a team, I think one of the best things that could happen to Mezzi is him go to a team that doesn't have high expectations. Yeah. And then he just gets to try to do everything and just get a chance to expand his game, not get pulled quickly. Maybe it's honestly the opposite. Maybe this scenario is the best for Mezzi, but it seems like the best for what he wants. And that might be wrong of me. I'm never trying to speak on a player's mindset because we honestly don't know. Just because they speak a certain way when we're asking them questions doesn't mean that that's me connecting the dots could be irresponsible, but it seems like Mezzi wants more opportunity. And I think the place that he would get that is on a team with lower expectations.
I completely agree with you. I was pretty much going to say the same exact thing, where it's like, I hate to sound like an old head, but like, Mezzi's got to make a decision here. Like, he's on a winning team right now, and the Kings are one of the funner teams in the NBA. And if he's not having a good time now, then that says a lot about what he values as a player. And I guess
he might be having a good time. Like, I don't know.
Right. I guess we also can't put that on him. Like, we have not spoken to him in that capacity. We don't know the answer, but it definitely gives off and everything we know about his on the court game is he wants to do more and feels like he has the ability to do more. And I could absolutely see him loving his time on Oklahoma City or Houston, or throw in X
Indiana.
tanking
He's
team,
boys with
Indiana.
Tyrese.
Absolutely. Like I could, or the Spurs even, funny enough,
Yeah.
I could see him on the Spurs. Like I feel like he would love an opportunity to showcase his game, which is great. But it's just, it's unfortunate that this is the kind of situation a lot of people I feel like would be incredibly happy with. Like you're an upstart player who was, Chimezie Metu wasn't getting a lot of playing time when he was on the Spurs previously. Like the Kings have given him a real opportunity here to make a name for himself. And again, I don't want to speak to his mindset because we don't really know, but it does appear like he wants more with his role, which is understandable from an individual standpoint. Of course, you're going to want a bigger role, but you got to accept the role you have and try and thrive in it. And it doesn't feel like he has done that at all.
Yeah, it is a tough conversation to have because, like we both said, I never want to speak on what somebody's mindset is, but I will tell you just, and I think you're doing the same, like the impression that we've gotten is that like it was very weird that the Kings were on their 7-game win streak and we get Mezzi in media, and you can go back and find this clip. It's on the Kings Herald YouTube. Sean always posts clips on Fox 40's YouTube. I would guess that Matt was at that presser as well, and it's on the ABC 10 YouTube.
James put it up on
yes,
Twitter, if I'm not mistaken.
It was weird, dude. It was like this guy seemed unhappy with the opportunity he was getting, and I just don't understand. So that's where we're coming from, and why Mezzi is in this kind of coin flip category. Next one I have, Alex Len.
Yep.
And I think a lot of this has to do with he's making almost $4 million, $3.9 million, and he's expiring. And he's the third center on this roster, and there's still Neemias Queta. Like, to me, obviously we already hinted at, like, Richaun Holmes is going to be would be surprised if he's not traded. Even if you move Richaun, Alex Len, to me, like, if you were to move on from him, I'm fine with Nemi being your third string center compared to Alex Len. Like, at the beginning of the year, I probably would have preferred Alex Len, but it's kind of whatever, I think. Like, if you're dealing with your third string center, you're kind of in a bad spot in a little bit anyways, and you just hope that guy can get by. But I think that there's a decent chance that Alex Len is like the needed matching salary to make something work as the added additional piece in a deal with his nearly $4 million. It's $3.9 million that's expiring, and he's not getting any run.
Yep, absolutely. I think I completely agree with you. And on top of that, I would say, as funny as it sounds, Alex Len has a little bit of name cachet as well. Like if you throw Alex Len in a
Fourth
trade,
overall pick,
it's by no means is it adding. I would say it's adding as much value as Mezzi, but he doesn't play. To your point, like I think Alex is somebody with his size, and he really does have pretty impressive mobility for a guy his size. Like he is not an unplayable player. Like if someone were to trade for Alex Len, you shouldn't be surprised if you see him actually get some minutes. Like I think he has some value, and I think he's probably not going to be in any trade discussions and in the main discussions, but yeah, I think he could be one of those, oh shit, we need to make $2 million work here. Would you rather have Alex Len or Mezzi? And they're like, I'd rather just take the guy that I know.
Right. Adam Fox in the chat. I think this is a good question when it comes to Len. Who plays if Domas has to miss time? And I think you could say the same thing about Mezzi. Like, if a big misses time, would you regret moving on from Alex Len?
I don't think so. I think, and I asked this question I thought about this question a couple weeks ago before, or like a week ago when Richaun wasn't playing at all. And I was like, if Sabonis were just to go down for like 3 or 4 games, I kind of feel like Richaun would get that start, right? Like I don't think that they would start Len or promote Mezzi to the starting lineup. I don't know why I feel that way. There's not really any logic behind it. It just feels like Richaun has been that starting center. It wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense for Mezzi to become the center. I don't think with that starting lineup, but I don't know. I think that's a great question. I mean, that position is definitely their second biggest need to me. I think that they have, if they want to be a realistic playoff contender, then they have a bigger need that we can get to later. But I think definitely that backup big is their second biggest need.
Yeah, I think there's a real debate on who's a better player between Fox and Domas. And I honestly don't know that it's a necessary debate or anything. I just think they're in the same category. But I think by far Domas is the more irreplaceable guy.
Yes.
Like, you're 100%. So, like, De'Aaron went down. You could throw Davion in there and be fine. You could put Malik in there and be fine.
Yep.
If Domas goes down,
you're fucked.
You're kind of just screwed. Yeah, like, there's no real answer. Meg says, is Chima a small ball center?
Maybe.
I love the idea. Yes, I think he's a small ball center, but hell no, he's not a small ball center in the NBA right now.
Not
like,
right now.
That's just not. If Sabonis goes down, there is no option that like makes you not fall off super hard.
Right.
Like, I don't know what the answer is. And I don't think that whether or not Alex Len is on this roster makes that any easier or harder.
No.
You know? So I guess that's where I'm at with that. Who do you have else in this coin flip category?
I think this is going to be a massive surprise here, but I have Harrison Barnes.
So do I, man.
Wow. Yeah. And you know what's crazy is as time goes by, it just feels like it gets lower and lower. As in terms of percent he gets traded. Like, it just doesn't feel like he's going to get moved. It feels like they're going to play this out and just see what happens. And I'm going to reserve judgment until the end until it all plays out, because I don't think any of us really know how there's just so many different directions it can go. It's just kind of a calculated risk that I think Monty's going to take. I think the biggest problem is the most obvious one. You trade Harrison Barnes, you need a Harrison Barnes in return.
Yes.
And that's just, unless you start cloning people, that's just not how it works. So,
well, in no team, like, how often do you see a trade? Most trades are a team trading on different timelines. You know what I mean? One team is trying to make it happen right now, and the other team is trying to focus on their future, meaning they're fine with sacrificing their present results, right? Like, but how often is a team like you said, if you trade a Harrison Barnes, you need another Harrison Barnes, another player of that role. What other team is thinking, I would love to trade my small forward for another small forward?
Right.
That is so outlier, but the whole issue here in my mind is HB's on an expiring $18.4 million deal. And are you okay with risking him walking for nothing? Cleveland, to me, is the biggest threat for HB. They have somewhere around 20 million in available cap space. And if HB goes to that team, you're talking Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Harrison Barnes, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen. Like, HB is the perfect fifth guy for that team. You know what I mean? But
because they don't need him, because he would be their fifth player. And if he shows up, it's great. If he just does the dirty work on a game and scores 8 points, that's fine. They have other guys who can score. But I think the biggest problem with Harrison Barnes, and I guess we've had a tough time of getting it across, because ever since we had about a 20 to 30 minute conversation about this the other day on the live, and it really opened my eyes to how many people feel like Harrison Barnes should be in that less than 1% category, where they really feel like Harrison is kind of invaluable to this team. And a lot of it has to do with his off the court stuff. I see Jim in here says HB is a glue guy. I saw a lot of that, of people being like, they can't trade Harrison Barnes. The stability, the amount that he means to this roster is irreplaceable. I think that is, I 100% agree with you, but at the same time, that's a little bit of sports movie ism, if that makes sense. Like, at the end of the day, if you get a better basketball player, or a player who brings in a different set of skills than Harrison Barnes, I don't think, unless it's like a DeMarcus Cousins, a Matt Barnes, a Ron Artest type of Draymond Green type of personality, like I don't think that it's going to ruin the chemistry in the locker room. I do think Harrison is a very beloved guy, but to as an example from last year, Tyrese Halliburton is about as loved of a teammate as it got. And I think they were all really hurt by when Tyrese, yeah, I know sports movieism is not a word. Sorry, Meg. Tyrese Halliburton was as loved as it gets in that locker room. And when they moved him, I think everyone was crushed. But they got over it, and the chemistry is totally fine this year. I just think it's, it's one of those things that it does suck. To the human side sucks, but like Harrison Barnes is a Hall of Fame player, as corny, as cheesy as it is to say. I'm sorry, Hall of Fame player, a Hall of Fame person.
Yes.
He is one of a kind. Like he really is a Hall of Fame person, and that kind of, it sucks to lose those people. The Kings lost Garrett Temple. He was one of those people. But you get over it, because at the end of the day, talent wins out. And if the Kings can somehow, and again, this, to bring it all back, this is why Harrison, I believe, is in this category. It's all about your on the court production, and Harrison Barnes is a very tough player to replace, and that's kind of the problem. That's a long-winded answer, but
no, I mean, I'm definitely with you, and it's tough, man. Like, in the chat is having the same reaction that they did when we did your Return of the Roar podcast the other day. You, myself, right. Frank, and Matt George.
Yeah, man, people are not. They don't want to hear it, bro. People do
and
not.
I get it, man. Like, I think you have a really good point with Halliburton, though, that like he was kind of the heart and soul of the team, seemingly, and then you move him, and the chemistry is at an all-time high this year. And I know you got another guy that's just like that, but I think point being, HB isn't exactly one of a kind. Like, as much as HB is amazing, like you said, Hall of Fame person, there's a lot of people in the Hall of Fame of people. That was horrible wording.
You're not wrong. No, I mean, you're not wrong. Like, you can find nice guys.
Yeah, like, and I don't know. Like, I am somewhat of a subscriber to. I think sometimes it's presented as a little too black and white, but I'm a subscriber to winning fixes everything. And if you bring somebody in that's winning you more games than HB, if you bring somebody in that's winning you more games, like, that's not an asshole, is really what it comes down to. Just make them not a piece of shit is really all it takes. Like, if they're not a bad person, and they're a really good basketball player, then it's all right. But like, I am the same as you. I'm feeling like it's less and less chance as the year goes on that HB gets moved. And I don't know, like the way that you're kind of explaining him almost feels like, honestly, similarly to the way that I was talking about Keegan, of like, if it's the right deal for a significant improvement, that you're including HB. But the difference here is, are you losing him for nothing at the end of this year? And we don't know the answer to that. Like, I think that the organization will have a much better idea of that than us.
Yeah.
And that's where this is tough, because for the last 2 years, it was just like, well, shit, if you don't move on from HB, you're going to lose him for nothing in a year and a half, or you're going to lose him for nothing in 2 years. Like, and that felt inevitable. But to be honest, right now, like, I think we said it on Return of the Roar, or I said it on Return of the Roar, that like, I don't think that it's a guarantee that he walks anymore. Like, I think an extension is within the realm of possibility. I think he could re-up at the end of this year. And there's a chance that, like, what if you make the 6th seed, but then, and HB is a big part of that, but then he walks at the end of the year? Is that worth it? You know what I mean? Like, it might be.
Yeah,
there's totally an outcome where he walks.
This is the conversation. This is the rabbit hole that you can fall into, because,
and he's the most complicated conversation.
He is, absolutely. And my pushback to what you said there would be, is it, and this is again what we talked about on the podcast the other day, is it a good thing for this team if you do extend Harrison Barnes? Is that in the team's long-term best interest?
It is. Okay, so what is the downside?
is that, and this is, it's just that you're hamstringing yourself. Again, like you're handcuffing yourself to Harrison Barnes. Depending on how much you end up paying him, you are then saying, let's say you pay him $15 million a year. I think that that's starter money. I think that that means that you are not going to allocate any more money to trying to get better at that position. And like I said the other day, I just think that it's too important of a position to not necessarily punt on, but just be like, I'm okay being okay at that position.
Yeah. That you could go try and get a Kyle Kuzma or a Jeremy Grant, like however you feel about those type of guys, but you could try something else.
That's what I was trying to say also the other day on the podcast with my analogy is like, instead of taking the solid hard hat guy that gives you the same thing on a night to night basis, which Harrison Barnes honestly does not, but you know, when things are good, you know what you're going to get from him. I would much rather take a risk on a guy who, like Malik Monk, where it's like, oh, like he could either go this way or he can go that way. And I'm kind of banking Kyle Kuzma, I think, is a good example of this, where people have this negative connotation of Kyle Kuzma in their mind when it's like, this is a 20-point a game scorer and he's 24 years old. Like, how are you going to tell me, regardless of what you think of his mentality, which you honestly don't know about, because I guarantee nobody's following the Wizards every day. Like, how do you not want to take a risk on that kind of talent and potential over? I mean, honestly, I think Harrison Barnes is a 28-year-old veteran who really hasn't improved much in his last 2 to 3 years. Like he should kind of be peaking right now. Kuzma is 27. That is a good point. But yeah, I forget that he did stay 3 years in college. I just feel like Harrison hasn't improved in a couple years. And it feels like at the age of 30, he's kind of more flattening than going up.
Yeah. And I think there's just two sides, you know, like it's tough because while it's like, just taking a risk could go two ways, obviously, right? But like, I understand wanting to take that. It just depends on like how they feel about the potential internal growth of Keegan Murray, Kevin Huerter, right, of Malik Monk. Because if you feel like those guys can take a jump, then like it might be safer to just go with what you know already with HB than to try and input a Kuzma. And maybe he does have an ego that gets in the way, you know, like, and I don't know shit about Kuzma's personality, but like, I'm just using him as an example. You know, I could say the same thing about Jeremy Grant, who's talked about like wanting more touches in different places, you know, like, but maybe you bring somebody in and maybe they fuck with the chemistry that's so good right now. And you don't know, but maybe they come in and then take this team up to like kind of what we saw with the Jesus Christ, the Denver Nuggets, of like they took a risk on Michael Porter Jr., for example. And that's a different, like that wasn't necessarily they had to let somebody go in order to do that. But you take a risk and then from there it ends up paying off more long term. Like I get what you're saying, and I honestly don't know where I land on it. But I will say when it comes down to it, I wouldn't be surprised if HB was here. I wouldn't be surprised if he was gone. But I'm kind of at the point where whatever move the front office decides to make, Monty McNair, Wes Wilcox, and I think that obviously, well, Vivek Ranadive will be very involved, but also Mike Brown will be very involved. Whatever decision those guys come up with, I'm kind of at the point where I'm going to just trust it. Are you the same?
No.
No, and that's fair because it's literally been one good offseason, right?
I think that I trust Monty. I do think Monty's a really smart mind. It's just with this, I think this HB situation is it's just so tough because I do think that the person side of this plays a really big role. And I think that it's just tough to overlook Harrison Barnes as the glue guy. And again, like I think Monty's not dumb, and I think it's just too big of a risk to play without him. And you know, the thing is, I'm acting like extending him is the end all be all, and that's the end of this conversation. If you extend him, you can still have him as a trade piece. Like you can revisit if the next guy becomes unhappy. you have Harrison Barnes as a good trade piece to move for that guy. The Kings really don't have many people that they can make another move for. If they wanted to get a third guy next to Fox and Sabonis, they don't have anyone to get that deal done except for their young players. And HB can be that piece that is a movable, tradable piece in the future too. It doesn't have to be right now. It's just, right now it feels immediate if they want to win, if they want to secure this winning.
I think Meg has a decent question of like who gives up a ton of stuff for expiring contracts historically. And
teams.
And I don't know historically, or teams that are just trying to test it.
Franchises,
like Cleveland, for example, where it's like, oh, we want to just see, like, do we want to offer this guy money? So let's just trade for him now. We'll give you all Karis LeVert or whatever. That maybe Karis is a better player who's younger and Domas has a previous relationship with. He could tell you about Karis. I don't know how I feel specifically about that deal, but like, and I can't think of things off the top of my head, but like, I think that that's an example of like maybe the way that this could sort of go. And I think what it really comes down to is like, are you worried about losing him for nothing? And I don't know the answer to that.
I think to answer Meg's question of who gives up stuff traditionally, it's usually, I mean, it's more commonplace recently only because we've gone through this period of superstars asking out of their team. And that's kind of where a player like Harrison Barnes would come in extreme value because he's that expiring contract. And presumably if you're trading a really good player, they make a lot of money. And Harrison Barnes would be a good filler. And, you could sell him as, you trade LeBron and then you get this huge $18 million off of your book. So that's usually how it would happen. It's just we're unfortunately, of course, very Kingsy. When the Kings finally are ready to make a move like that, there's nobody who wants to find a new home.
Right. And I do think you have a great point of just like the opportunity cost of his money being on the books. I haven't looked at the exact I am not great at the salary cap. And at some point I need to get better
so
at
tough,
this.
Bro.
Oh, it's so tough.
There's so many.
Like I could sit here and lay out all the numbers. You could look at Spotrac and it tells you expected. And I'm just like, dude, I do not know that I can trust these. And I'm certainly not trying to talk about it as if these are 100% accurate. I don't know. But my impression is that if considering that Terrence Davis has their expiring $4 million, Chimezie Metu's expiring 1.9, Trey Lyles expiring 2.6, Alex Len expiring 2.9, Harrison Barnes expiring 18.4, Matthew Dellavedova expiring 2.6, like all that money coming off the books, I'd imagine that the Kings would have an opportunity to have some cap space this offseason. And if you can get a Jeremy Grant, for example, like I'm taking Jeremy Grant over Harrison Barnes. I don't know if that's a hot take. Kyle Kuzma, it's a consideration. I think it's kind of the conversation we've been having here. It's a risk that either could pay off or could come back to bite you in the ass. Like I think there's a handful of guys. Like I would throw money at PJ Washington. That's a young guy. Like Cam Johnson is another guy, restricted free agency. Like some people really like him. So I think it's interesting. I think that's the end of the Harrison Barnes conversation, at least for me. I don't know if you have anything else.
No, I think we spent enough time on it.
Yeah, and it makes sense why that's the longest conversation. I think he deserves to be. Is there anybody else in this coin flip, or are we?
No, that's it. We are at the surprise now.
Yeah.
Which we've talked about already.
Would be surprised if they're not traded. We mentioned Richaun Holmes, who has 3 years, $36 million remaining. In that final year is a $12.9 million player option. He's going to pick up that player option, barring some outlier bullshit. Is there anybody else in that category for you?
Nope.
Same, actually.
Yeah.
So I guess the question with Richaun is that, like, my only question, the only way that I could see him not being traded is if nobody was interested.
Yeah.
Which seems like a real possibility in a way, no? At that price, at least.
I think that's the thing is his contract is that of which kind of like what I was talking about with Harrison earlier, where it's like you pay him $11 million for a center. It's kind of starter money or it's high level backup, which he proved to not be earlier in the season. Again, maybe new situation. It'll work out differently for him. But I just think it'd be different if he were playing consistently for the Kings this season, but with him essentially being pulled out of the rotation and making $11 million a year, or $12 million a year, not too many teams are going to jump at the opportunity to give up real assets for something that they haven't seen with their own eyes. They have not seen Richaun Holmes in the past 6 months be a productive NBA player, somebody who is worth $11 million. So especially if Richaun is going to be the centerpiece of a trade, I think that we can kind of, kiss away that Richaun Holmes for PJ Washington kind of deal. I don't know why a team would view Richaun Holmes in such high regard anymore.
Right.
Maybe I'm poo-pooing too much on it. Maybe this is a situation where we're too close, and from an outsider perspective, people are just like, oh no, like we'll take the risk. I mean, is Richaun a risk at this point?
I mean, he for sure is on this deal, but like when he signed it, I thought that it was a good deal.
Right.
Like,
and that's kind of the conundrum of it.
They literally signed Alex Len and traded for Tristan Thompson, traded DeLon Wright for Tristan Thompson because they thought that Richaun Holmes was signing somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And my understanding is that his agent just fucked up that situation. His agent went out and said that we're expecting to get $20 million a year. Right. And so I think they scared off the Toronto and Charlotte. And there was one other one, but scared off those two teams and whatever the other one is. And so they went in other options. Like Toronto went and paid Chris Boucher how much money? I'm going to pull this up real quick. It was like something not that far off. As Spotrac, of course, decides to slow while I'm waiting on it. Paid him 3 years, 35. Richaun has 3 years, 36 remaining.
Exactly.
Richaun, I think that Richaun is a better player than Chris Boucher. And I don't feel like I'm crazy for that, but at the same time, I'm chuckling because Richaun can't even break the fucking rotation here.
Right.
Which I don't understand. And it's a weird scenario. I still think that Richaun is a starting center. I think if anything, what we've seen is that he needs to play in a pick and roll heavy offense to optimize his efficiency. Yep. But when he does that, man, he's like a top 5 efficiency on like 14, 13 points a game. And he's flirting with numbers of efficiency that only like Mitchell Robinson and like Rudy Gobert are doing, the guys that do nothing but dunk the ball. Like I think that he has that. I think that he was a switchable defender. I did feel like his defense was overstated a little bit towards the end of his.
I think not this year. His defense has been terrible this year.
It has. And it's just tough though. Like I will say, I do not understand why like the idea with Chimezie Metu is that you could switch everything and you can't do that with Richaun. That doesn't quite make sense to me because I don't really feel like Mezzie's good at it, to be honest. Not that Richaun is necessarily good at it, but I don't know. It's a weird situation to me. And then I think that like the Richaun stuff, like if you're talking PJ Washington as an ideal scenario, like that's why I kind of like put all these guys in the coin flip category, right? Like if you're talking Richaun Holmes and Trey Lyles, and then the Kings have 2 second-round picks, like they have their own, and then Indiana's, right? Which maybe Indiana's doesn't turn out to be as good, but like I think it's Richaun plus other shit to get something. Like I think that's where you're at, or a team is desperate and they really need a center. Like I think that Charlotte is the obvious option. Brooklyn doesn't really have an answer at the center position right now. I don't know if that's Richaun Holmes, but could you take like Seth Curry, who's not getting enough run? Like this is something I talked about in the offseason and was surprised how much that person that covers Brooklyn was open to that idea. Like I think there's teams that could very much use a center. And if they realize a hole there, that maybe that's you get your opportunity to step in. But I don't know. I would expect him to be moved. I would very much think that the Kings are constantly trying to, but they're not trying to attach a bunch of things to him just to dump him or anything like that. Maybe that they are, maybe they're willing to, not a bunch, but maybe they're willing to attach a Trey Lyles and a 2nd-round pick just to take back an expiring contract, just to clear up cap space. Because then if him and HB walk, all of a sudden that's $30 million off your books, plus all this other expirings that are probably at least another 5 to 10 million. And then you're talking about a lot of money. So like maybe that's the case, but he seems by far like the most obvious candidate to be moved on from. Yeah. That's definitely where I'm at. So like I said, we aren't going to specifically talk about other names. I just haven't gotten the time to really go through all that and feel like I have a great grasp on all these other skill sets and guys around the league. Like at some point we'll take a Q&A from everyone in here and maybe just give general ideas on some different names. But when it comes to the archetypes that you think that the Kings need, what stands out to you as the holes on this roster that you'd like to fill?
Yeah, I think it's definitely length and defensive, a defensive forward player, like, and I mean that positionally and, defensive minded as well. And they have to be able to shoot. I mean, I think it's clear that if you're going to be on the offense or going to be on the floor with Domas and or Fox, like you're going to have to be a shooter, because
you're not talking KZ Okpala.
Exactly. Or else KZ Okpala would fit perfectly. And I think they kind of tipped their hand a little bit with, starting KZ at the start of this season. And we saw the Kings experiment with trying to start Mo Harkless for a period of time last season. I think that it's clear that they very much lack that piece, someone that they can throw on Paul George and, Giannis Antetokounmpo and Pascal Siakam and guys like that, where it's, they either have Keegan Murray or Harrison Barnes to throw on them at the moment. And I just think that they could really use somebody with definite length and some defensive dogness. Because I also do think that they do need, they need that dog on their team. Like they don't really have, they don't need Draymond Green, but they need somebody that I think has a little bit of nasty to them. I don't think this team has a lot of personality or a lot of fuck you, if that makes sense.
At least a guy that's like playing a lot, right? Because Davion for sure is that guy. But
I don't
how
think
much
he's vocal though.
That's a good point. I get that same impression. Yeah, I get that same impression. Makes us Harrison Barnes would be perfect. That's hilarious. And a damn good point. I laugh because she has a point, I am with you. That is the most obvious hole, right? Is somebody that can defend these wings. Because right now it is Harrison Barnes. And as much as like I think he's been good on offense and he hasn't been a liability on defense, he's also not a stopper there. And that's really what they need. This team needs somebody that can take on those assignments and do well. And shout out HB, like this, I'm not trying to go at HB. He's won that defense player of the game chain 2 games in a row. Well deserved, right? And those pictures are the best thing ever, by the way. Like the laser pointers that they give everyone and everything, and hearing the locker room chant "light the beam" while whoever is flickering the lights in the background, like those videos are the best thing ever. But they need a wing stopper, like they don't have that right now, and it's hard to find that. Like
exactly, and that's the problem,
right?
I have on my archetype shot creation is a plus, and at that point I was like, yeah, a 6'9" long defender who can hit threes and maybe create his own shot.
So like LeBron, or what are we talking here? Right? Like, right. It's super tough to find, right? Well, OG Anunoby, first of all, I'm a huge OG Anunoby guy. I think Pascal Siakam fits this. He's
a little bit more big man than wing, but
yeah. If you're really talking just stopper and getting the bare minimum on offense, and I mean by far the bare minimum, like is a Matisse Thybulle in addition that's like maybe somewhat interesting, just as like he's better offense than KZ Okpala. You know what I mean?
Is he? Or is his defense so good that it completely negates his offense?
That might be what it is. That might be what it is. It's probably
And also,
more
if
of
you
the
have
latter.
Joel Embiid and other stars to hide his, I
Right.
mean, which the Kings, you maybe could argue their offense, and people have said this, offense is not the problem. So it's not like I think they can even afford to lose a little bit of offense, but you would still have to. I think that this hypothetical defensive wing would have to be able to shoot at least league average from 36% or above from three.
I mean,
To be
Lou
somebody who
Dort
can really. I
is a
thought about Lou Dort.
dream.
I just don't know. I think it has to be a forward because then you're moving Kevin Huerter up to the 3, and this is presuming that you trade Harrison Barnes in this situation, I guess. But like you're running Huerter and Keegan at your 3-4. That's not really much of an answer for you. Still have a big hole at 3 or at that long wing position.
Oh, he's only 6'3", huh? I really thought he was taller.
No, he's very short. He's definitely a guard. I mean, I've always had a fascination with Robert Covington. He's kind of, especially in his prime, was the peak of this.
And I feel like
who
Richaun
gets
is so good on that
3
team.
steals and blocks per game.
Like Richaun is not the primary value, obviously, in the return of that trade, but I always felt like Richaun was so good on the Clippers.
Yeah,
sure. And yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think Jeremy Grant is a guy that totally stands out to me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, like, you're not getting Dorian Finney-Smith. He's the guy that like actually is a good fit alongside Luka, but I think that's like the type of guy that we're talking about.
Exactly.
Andrew Wiggins, what he is now, is the type of guy we're talking about.
Herb Jones.
Yes. If there's other people, if there's anyone in the chat that can think of more guys, definitely let us know. Like, is Patrick Williams somebody that can evolve into that? Is DeAndre Hunter somebody that can evolve into that? Those are two total risks,
right?
But like, those are two teams that probably would be interested in HB. I don't know where Chicago's at, but I'd imagine Atlanta's trying to win. And maybe there's something there. Like maybe Denny Avdia is that guy. I think he's been solid on defense, and like maybe he's that type of guy. I still dream of Franz Wagner every single night, but it fucking is what it is, I guess. Whatever. Just lost the coin flip, but it is what it is. I'm over it. Not salty at all. Totally chilling. The other position that very much stands out to me, and this is an easier guy to acquire, meaning that I would very much be expecting to spend a lot less, is just rim protection from your backup 5. And to the point where sometimes that you're not trying to put on that sometimes maybe Sabonis is playing a little bit less because your backup 5's rim protection is really valuable. Or maybe that you feel like you can play Domas at the 4. I don't really see that happening. Like I think that with the style of this team, I really doubt that happens. But I think that like upgrading your backup 5 could have a decent impact on this team. Like Nerlens Noel is somebody that is kind of interesting to me. I do think he's a good rim protector. I don't think that he's just like bad, and that's the reason that Detroit isn't playing him. I think that they're just prioritizing youth. I think that Nerlens Noel is somewhat interesting, but I think that rim protection from the backup 5 is something that I'd be interested in trying to see if you could get, but obviously I am not spending much to try and do that.
Yeah. The ideal person, and I was thinking this, and I know I'm not trying to shoehorn Kyle Kuzma onto the Kings, but I thought of this when I was thinking of how we can get Kyle Kuzma to the Kings. I feel like Daniel Gafford is just like the perfect backup center. I have loved Gafford since he joined the league. I feel like it wouldn't take a lot of assets to get him. I don't think the contracts work out with either Harrison or Richaun, that they can maybe work it out, but Denny Avdia is another wizard that you can maybe pull. You can pull in Gafford along with him. Or I saw earlier in the chat someone mentioned Rui Hachimura. I'm not a big Rui guy at all, but all those players I think are or at least 2 of those guys I could definitely see Washington being willing to part with, just because I feel like Washington is pretty much just floating in NBA purgatory right now. Like they don't really have any pure direction.
God, I can't believe that we get to talk shit on other teams like that now,
right.
dude. Like, oh, hell yes.
Wait,
like,
below 500?
They have no fucking direction, dude. That team
Right.
is so trash. Like, what is wrong with them? Like,
Ooh,
could never be us.
What do you think about Naz Reid as a backup center? He has traditionally absolutely fucked the Kings.
I don't think that he's a good defender. I think that he's a very good offensive player that can shoot and put the ball on the deck and finish. And has a lot. He just seems like a Metu to me in a way. And yeah, I think he has more size and physicality. Yeah, probably a better version. A
little bit,
but he seems like a little bit of a Metu to me. I think he'd be an upgrade. What do you think of Mo Bamba?
Mo Bamba, I think that's interesting. It's a good risk. Like that's a low risk, medium to high reward. I think if he can't play on Orlando, though, that should probably tell us a little bit of something about how the Mo Bamba experience has gone. I think it's Orlando kind of thrives. I mean, and I think Bol is a better talent, but they were very willing after years of watching Mo Bamba play. They were very willing to give Bol all the opportunity where it felt like for a while. They definitely tried Mo Bamba. He got a lot of starts last year, but I think they've given up on that experiment. Yeah, and I think we should as well.
I am not educated enough on Mo Bamba, and I think that's going to be a theme throughout the course of probably most of these conversations, to be honest. Like, I have general ideas, but I just feel uncomfortable speaking on guys that I'm unsure of, and I think Mo Bamba could be interesting if you're just bringing him in as a backup center. Like, it is what it is. Like, that's fine. Jackson Hayes, the off-court shit is honestly concerning to me because it seems pretty tough, but
not great.
I'm not the most educated on it. But the last thing that the Kings need is another off-court scenario.
They just don't need those problems.
And he doesn't. This is shitty, but it's how professional sports look or works. He doesn't have enough talent to like overlook that shit.
Yep.
And not overlook, but to like make you think like, oh well, just beyond that, I guess. Like it just that combined with him not being anything right now makes me not really look in his direction. Wemby, sure, Meg, sure,
yeah, let's do it.
Larry Nance, I would love a Larry Nance, I think he's exactly the type of guy we're talking about. I also don't think a team that is genuinely working its way into championship contention is going to consider moving on from Larry Nance.
It's a great shout, though.
It is a great shout. That's the exact type of guy that we're talking about. Yep. And if anybody in the chat, I think this is the part where we're going to go to Q&A. This pod is running way longer than expected, which is just a theme for a fucking podcast that I'm on, apparently.
Yeah.
But if anybody in the chat has any questions, whether that be shouts of names or general questions, whether that be about the league, about the NBA, and you could throw it about anything, then go ahead and let us know. Because
Brennan's
also,
dirty ass socks.
Yeah, I don't give a shit. I might be wearing the same socks. I don't give a damn. I was thinking of recording with Frank earlier this year, or this year. I mean, definitely this year, but earlier this week, and it didn't end up working out, which is definitely on me, not on Frank. Shout out to Frank. But it didn't end up working out, but I did field a few questions when we thought that was going to happen on Twitter. So we'll go through this a little bit.
Yeah.
Chris at Pocket Janitor on Twitter asked our thoughts on the SZA album. Have you happened to listen to the SZA album?
No,
Chris?
I'm so washed. No, but I've heard.
I will tell you, it's so fucking good. It's so
that's what I've heard.
Dude. And typically, to be blunt, I honestly can't listen to female artists that much because where I enjoy my music is singing along, rapping along, whatever it is. And obviously that's tough for me when it's female artists. You know what I mean? And that's no hate on that, but that's where I get my enjoyment in music. But this album hits, bro. It is so good. So trust me on that. That is very good. And I promise most of these are basketball questions. But Malik Monk can pass and shoot. Any chance he might eventually develop enough to play point guard? And this is from Bruv on Twitter at Opinionator49. If Davion is moved on from, is Malik Monk just your backup point guard? Like, if you're left in a scenario where that happens, are you comfortable with him being your backup point guard?
Yeah, I was honestly thinking about that earlier today, and I think I'm fully at that point where it's just like he has all of the skills of a point guard. Like he's definitely not who you want as your primary ball handler, absolutely not, but he's really their third string ball handler. Like he's not going to have the ball more than Fox. He's not going to have the ball more than Sabonis. Like the offense literally will run through Sabonis. It's not like, I think the only time you really need to think about Malik in the traditional point guard role would be kind of just in pick and roll as the lead pick and roll ball handler. I don't think they're really going to run too much half court offense through Malik Monk. Kind of just like a more extended version of what we saw tonight. I mean, Malik was incredible tonight again, especially moving the ball around. I think he had 6 assists tonight. He can absolutely play patchwork backup point guard.
Yeah. Did you just drop some shit?
I did. I definitely dropped a Sharpie.
100%. You played it off really well, though, so my bad for calling you out.
No, I was just fiddling. I have to have something in my hands at all times.
No, I'm definitely the same. I'm very comfortable with Malik as a backup point guard. I never would have thought that had been the case.
Never.
But if something were to happen to Davion, which was the case tonight, he's got a non-COVID related illness. I think that you could play him at the backup point guard. They obviously went with Delly, but I think that if you're running out Malik with Herter and say Sabonis, that's enough playmaking, all you need right there. I'm not really worried about another point guard. We'll go to a little bit from the chat here before I move on to the next things on Twitter. Can we make a move for Boban just for fun? Only if we bring Tobias Harris as well.
Toby and Bobby.
Exactly. Plumlee and Washington for Richaun and a second rounder. Just feels like something in my mind that from Sacramento's point of view, sure. I just don't know that that's something that Charlotte does.
Can I just say, hold on. I was looking at clutch stats earlier today. I was doing some research for my show tomorrow.
I saw your tweet.
This man, is it Miles Plumlee? Mason Plumlee? I think it's Mason Plumlee, correct?
Oh, it's definitely Mason. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, man. I don't know.
I was thinking of a different Miles. I'm not going to lie. I got thrown off for a second there.
This man, Miles Plumlee, Mason. I know we just went over this. This man, Mason Plumlee, is ridiculous in the clutch in terms of rebounding. His rebounding stats astounding to me. In 69 clutch time minutes, which is clutch is defined as 5-point game with 5 minutes or less in the game. Mason Plumlee, 17 offensive rebounds, 16 defensive rebounds, 33 total rebounds, leading the NBA in clutch rebounds, total clutch rebounds.
Bro, I looked
I don't
up Mason
know what to
Plumlee.
do with that information, but wow.
Well, we should trade for him, obviously. Not we. My bad. The Kings should trade for him.
Come on. Whoa.
Yeah. I got to get my shit straight. So I looked up Mason Plumlee on Basketball Reference.
Mm-hmm.
This is a fucking amazing nickname. Plum Dog Millionaire.
Plum Dog Millionaire. Yes, sir.
That is so good, bro. So good. Just joined, but did you already talk about Gentry being at the OKC Minnesota game? I did not see that.
No, I did not see that.
And I don't really know what to make of that, but I'm not going to overreact to that guy being at any sort of games. Alvin Gentry Alvin Gentry is just like a fiend for sports, bro. That guy is in love with sports. He's also the nicest person ever. Alvin Gentry will say what's up, just passing. And he's always talking about some random sport thing that I did not keep up with, but I just try to bullshit I watched it. And it's honestly because I only watch basketball, and he's talking about some other sport that's super relevant, game recently that I probably should know, but that dude is in love with sports. Understandably so. How do we feel about Keegan at the 4 so far? It seems like his defense is steadily improving. Mm-hmm. I don't really have any strong feelings about Keegan compared to the 4 or the 3, to be honest. And I don't even know that I feel like the 4 or 3 are that different of a position in today's NBA. I kind of feel like they're the same.
Yeah, that part definitely. It definitely feels like there's the same. Also, I think he's benefited a lot by having Harrison next to him, who is pretty much the same size and build as him, where it's he doesn't have to guard. There's not a okay, Keegan, you're definitely getting that guy. It's all pretty switchable.
Right.
I think that has helped Keegan a lot along the way. But
Right.
I definitely think he has not been a turnstile. He has not been abused. I think we've seen Kevin Herter has been sought out defensively. I haven't seen teams really, eye Keegan Murray down, which is a good start.
I have not either. I've seen some teams try and it's gone okay. I think like New York was probably the worst example. But no, it hasn't been bad. I have not seen Die Hard yet. Chris, have you seen Die Hard, and is it a Christmas movie?
I just had this conversation with one of our board ops who's like huge into movies. I've not seen Die Hard, but he explained to me that what makes Die Hard a Christmas movie is that it is about a guy trying, at its root, it's a guy trying to get home to his family for Christmas. And obviously, I guess like
and just fucking killing anyone in his way, or whatever.
So I guess that's where the debate of like it's not a Christmas movie is. It has nothing directly to do with Christmas because it's a bunch of murdering. I don't fucking know what the hell. I assume in Die Hard, a lot of people die.
Me too.
Yeah. At its root, I guess it's a guy trying to get to his family on Christmas. So that makes it a Christmas movie. So I will take Christopher Laud's logic.
I don't know if it makes it a Christmas movie, but we'll take it. Further on the music question, I guess somebody asked what music is mostly played during practices, because I guess it was talked about how the Grizzlies play NBA Youngboy nonstop, which by the way, of course, the Grizzlies play NBA Youngboy. Like that is the most fitting thing ever.
Yeah.
Let me know what comes to mind. I know the other day that the Carter 3 was shuffled through a bunch. There's a decent amount of Wayne. I hear Lil Baby an okay amount.
I hear Jay-Z a good amount of times.
We have heard Jay-Z. We haven't heard 50 enough for how much he's involved, to be honest.
Not so much Drake played either.
There was a lot of Drake when it was Tyrese, because Tyrese was a big Drake guy. I know Tyrese used to be on Aux a lot. And Aux, not Hawks, by the way, for what it's worth.
Right.
But Tyrese used to be on Aux a lot, and I think he was a big Drake guy from what I could tell. But yeah, it's a lot of like modern shit. There is some like young boy mixed in, I guess. But no, it seems like a lot of just typical stuff. Like, I don't know, just Lil Baby, Wayne. Yeah, nothing too crazy. I don't know. Is there anything else that comes to mind of like typical music that's there?
No, not really. Nothing's coming to mind. It's all.
Yeah.
Usually I'm more just like, I need this music turned down because my mic can't pick up the audio of Nimi Keita freaking mumbling.
Right. Or KZ Okpala just giving 2-word answers. Yeah. Somebody said non-basketball related. This is Andrew Sterling on Twitter at AndrewS2687. Non-basketball related. Have you heard of any rookie hazing / pranks going on?
God. Yeah.
You have?
Yeah, they just Malik Monk was. I sent it to you. Malik Monk was on the Bill Simmons podcast, and Bill asked Keegan asked Malik about Keegan, trying to get some personality out of him, and he asked if they have them doing any rookie duties, and he said that Keon carries the bags, which is just some typical rookie stuff, and Keegan on road trips, whenever they go on the plane, has to come with Chick-fil-A, which has been a staple for a couple years here.
Yeah, and we've seen the pictures of him holding big bags of food, and I kind of assumed it was Chick-fil-A because, like you said, it has been the staple recently. And I will say, I know that Malik said at the beginning of the year that he was planning on popcorning Chima's car, but also like you don't tell media that you're planning on doing that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So in response to this, I at Chima asking him, like, can you confirm or deny if this ever happened? He said, thankfully, nothing yet. Let's keep it that way. So I guess that's where we're at. But clearly Malik is the guy. If somebody's going to do it, it is Malik. Yeah. No questions asked.
Yeah. And make it happen. Not just like, yeah, he should do something. Be like, hey, Rook, like, where's it at?
Right. Like, yeah, no, like you're doing this shit. Get with the program. Right. Yeah. All right, bro. Well, I did not mean to keep you this long, but I appreciate you doing this.
You're good. Before we go,
yes,
there's an important question in here. Who you got in the World Cup tomorrow morning?
Argentina, because when I don't give a shit.
I'm sorry, Sunday morning.
Is it Sunday? That's good to know because I had no fucking clue.
Tomorrow's the third place game.
When I don't really give a damn about a sport, I'm going to just root for the GOAT to watch GOAT shit happen.
Right.
And so that's why I'm going to go with Argentina. But I do know probably more players on France. Like, I'm a big FIFA guy. We've definitely played FIFA together, and I may not have whooped my ass. What the fuck ever, bro? I whoop you at 2K, so watch your mouth.
That's not even true.
It is true.
Let's hop on right now,
bro. I swear
that, bro.
At some point we will do this. I'm so down. I cannot right after this.
Get out of here.
Yeah, you're about to find out these trigger fingers, bro. Chill. I am picking Argentina, but for no damn good reason except that Messi's there, and I would love to see goats do goat shit.
Right. It does feel like it is Messi's tournament. It's felt that way for a couple rounds now. He's been absolutely ridiculous. It's really tough to win World Cup back-to-back events, not years. I don't know. France is so fucking stacked. It really feels like it should be France's tournament to lose, but Messi, this is like the one thing that's missing from Messi's record, and I think he's announced that this is going to be his last World Cup. So for him to go out like this, like you're saying, would be some GOAT shit. So let's just all hope that it doesn't end on penalties, because penalties fucking suck.
Agreed.
Could you imagine?
Total bullshit.
Bro, could you imagine if an NBA game...
Wait. So didn't we? I think when we played FIFA, didn't it go to penalties and we refused to end the game that way?
Yeah.
So then we just ran it back.
We just ran back another 90 minutes. Right.
Yes. And I think we actually went through like 3 games before it ended. So I don't know what you're talking about. Waxing me, by the way. You need to watch your fucking mouth, bro. That is not what happened. Like, not true at all. Count. But yes, no, like penalties are super whack and just like a guessing game and absolute bullshit. And that's nobody wants to see a game win that way. So,
though, would it be lit if NBA games ended on free throws or like a 3-point shootout?
I don't mind the whole like racing to a certain score that I think the G League does now, and like we've seen in the All-Star game, right? But it's hella lame when it ends with Anthony Davis making a free throw, or not Anthony Davis specifically, but somebody making a free throw. Like,
that is true.
I don't know. That doesn't quite do it for me. It should be like some sort of football thing where, like, oh, if you make a field goal, the other team gets a chance to make a field goal type thing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't exactly know how to do this. Somebody says full court shots only. I'm so down. Like,
might as well.
Yeah.
Half court shot would be lit.
Yeah, it's a true test of skill. It's a true test of skill. So that's where we're at. Yeah. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody that's been in here. For myself and Chris Watkins of Sacktown Sports 1140. Tomorrow you got your show between 11 and noon.
I do. Yes, it's going to be online only, digital exclusive. We will be airing. Unfortunately, we will be airing the Minnesota Vikings against the Indianapolis Colts on our airwaves. So,
bro, if you lose that, like, I don't give a shit about football, but you will never hear the end of it, bro.
I will not be happy. So you can
if the Colts win, I hope that everybody that is watching this @s Chris Watkins, because he will be so down bad, and just make him feel even worse, please, because there's nothing like beating somebody that's already down because their team just lost. Yeah. So I'm a good friend, a good person, and that's where we're at. So appreciate everybody in here.
Yep.
Definitely take a look at the King's Herald and all the great work by the guys and gals that are part of that site, and take a look at their Patreon to support local independent Kings coverage. And if you enjoyed this episode of the King's Pulse podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review, and you'll hear from us again in the next couple days.